Hi, everyone. So happy to be here. And yes, we're going to be talking about LLMs and AI within the creative content space background, right? So we have 15 to 20 minutes. So I'm going to try to go a little bit fast to leave a little space for questions. But we're going to cover three main things on this talk, right? One, we're going to discuss about creative content testing. Second, we're going to be talking about AI and how is that AI can help us improve a lot of what we're doing today on creative content testing. And finally, we're going to have a little bit of a deep dive into LLMs, right? And what are LLMs? How do they help us as well to achieve everything we want in terms of improving creative content testing? All right. So let's start with some information, right? I mean, I don't know, maybe for you, this scene doesn't look quite different from what you see on your companies. And the thing is that research has taken a sit back, right, on today's creative process. This means that creatives really don't feel like using our data most of the times. We see that many creatives, and look, we see this with many of our clients where creatives or creative departments, I'm talking about brand owners, they don't really integrate the research process into the creative content, right, process itself. So we want to figure out why. And there are many reasons why, but I want to start with understanding a little bit of the story of what happened with content creation. And at the same time, how is that content testing actually evolved along the lines of this, right? So just from a very generic perspective, we can see that the content volume has increasingly evolved, during the years. And I'm just taking here from the 80s, right a little bit before the internet came in. But we have seen a constant evolution of the volume of content that we produce and that our consumers are consuming, right? But on the other end, one of the things that we see is that the way we are doing testing, the way we are integrating testing within these processes has remained flat, meaning that we continue doing things that don't look that different from what we used to do in the 80s, right? And this is probably one of the factors that we really need to analyze. One other thing to notice is that even though the content volume was increasing, it is on the last years that it has been really going to the space, right? We see the changes that happened with COVID, things like the appearances of new platforms like TikTok that not only means that you are advertising on TikTok or the millions of users that TikTok has, but TikTok is changing the way we consume content. It affected every other platform. And now this year, generative AI is helping us to produce faster content, right? To become creators even faster. You don't need a video editor to do edition like if you were an expert today, right? So this is just continue changing, right? And I think it's about time to talk about how we can actually improve testing, improve consumer testing to put it on the process of content creation. And let's deep dive on that, right? As I mentioned, it's not that different from what we used to do in the 80s. We put in there the launch of TVLink as a big milestone, because it was one of the methodologies that the industry started using the most. But the thing is that most of these methodologies, even the ones that were created after it, are mostly based on service, self-reported, right? And we know that this data is only a piece of the story, right? It's not the complete piece of information that we need in order to give better insight. Then second, these systems many times are slow and they do have a lot of manual intervention, which it's not ideal. Then they are perceived as complex, but that for creatives, right? I don't know, I don't have time to create a brief, to go into the process and wait for the data, then figure out how to improve it or implement it within my decision making, right? And then finally, data misalignment, right? Maybe I do it, I run the process, but it turns out that all the KPIs that I'm looking from the marketing brand perspective are not aligned with what you're telling me, right? So all of these factors are some of the things that we can improve, right? And let's also think about how is at the end of the day for researchers to actually make a decision, right? If these factors are the state of the art, imagine for researchers how hard it is to really think of should I just do my job and launch my campaigns, or actually also worry about implementing all of these processes, right? And it may be not an easy decision, right, to take. So let's go a little bit a step back, into thinking, do creators really need us, right? Do actually they need data from consumers to do what they do? Or are they okay with performance data and everything that they have already, right? And if we see, again, from a very generic perspective, like how the world of creatives is today, it's very complex, right? They need to navigate internally through many different things, right? Different platforms, multi-channels, brand development, creative process. They need to work with different teams. They have corporate mandates and objectives. They have reporting. They have like their own teams, their agencies. It's a quite complex world, right? And if to that you add up everything that's going on outside of their world, in means of like the consumers, like we have things like the post-COVID trends, right? We have shorter attention spans, new generations. Now it's not only generation, the millennial or like the Z, like now it's like alpha. Like we are in constant change, right? We have market changes, we have market dips, we have new formats and algorithms, and all of this context is super noisy, right? So if we go back to the question of like, do they need consumer data? Do they really need us, right? And I think the answer is yes. They need a direct line with consumers, but without the hassle of everything we just saw, right? Without spending too much time, without wondering if it's going to be aligned or not. And that's kind of like the perspective that we are trying to tackle with the AI, and that we're going to like talk about. So where AI comes into place to solve this issue, right? Or these challenges. And this is like, imagine a world where we can scale content testing 10x, make it actually be at the level of what marketers need, right? Be at the level of what our brand owners are requesting. And what if we could make the insights team the co-pilot for content creation? This is one of the most interesting phrases, I think, that I am going to leave you guys with, which is like, what if we could become the co-pilot for content creation, right? What if consumer insights becomes that? And AI can definitely help with that, right? So we're going to be talking about like how that's possible now. All right. AI, if we see it from a top level approach, we can say that AI is going to help us to two main things, right? Or it can help us to two main things. One, automation, and second, intelligence, right? So automation, this is probably like a lot of people actually say that before this year and last year, we were in the age of automation with AI, meaning that AI was already enabling a lot of automation. It was enabling scale. It was enabling like to make things faster, right? Now, we also needed the missing part, which was like the intelligence. We need AI to provide intelligence, to provide insight. And these are the two worlds that today are accessible to us as researchers. So in terms of automation, speed and scale. Speed, we're talking about like having faster data collections, faster analysis, and faster delivery. I think speed and time are very important, and we know that all our clients are asking for speed. But a lot of the times we see that what the industry has been giving us a speed is just faster data collections. But in reality, speed needs to be a speed towards actionability, right? Towards insight, towards make it easy for me to even brief you into what I need and welcome you into my process. Scale, audience reach, have like a real scalability in terms of like who can I test and how can I test them, and also have a better scalability in the relationship volume and price, which is super important, right? And all of these AI can help with, right? Through automation, we can leverage better all of these factors. Now, intelligence. One main factor is insight depth. As we said, like from the 80s, we've been testing probably like the same with a lot of service. But what if we can go deeper? What if we could integrate different layers of data? One of the challenges of integrating more layers of data is that analysis becomes more complex. But that's where intelligence with AI comes in, right? So we can actually add more layers and have an insight that it's deeper, that it's more intelligent, right? But that it doesn't make us like or cripple us with a lot of more time to analysis and so on. And then finally, actionability. We're talking about having prescriptive insights and accessibility to them as well. So these are factors that all can be achieved with AI, and some of the things that will make us to really achieve that co-piloting for creative content. Now, out of like everything that's going on with AI, we're gonna be talking about what are language models, right? And the name of the conversation is LLMs for creative content testing, right? Or creative content. So LLMs, if we read it aloud as it is, are large language models, right? So large language models, maybe you have heard of it. And if you haven't heard of the LLM term, I bet you have used it, right? Because probably you use ChatGPT already, or like some other chatbot like Bard from Google. And those chatbots are based on LLMs. Basically, LLMs are the little brains behind it. But what are LLMs and how we can use them? We're going to go to how we can use them. But what are they? So LLMs are what, let's say, I don't know if you also heard about the world of NLP, natural language processing, but I bet you have also been close to it. NLPs are algorithms that help us to process large amounts of data in the form of text. For example, things like analyzing open-ended questions or analyzing comments on social media. Those were based on NLPs. The thing with NLPs is that they were very hard to train, and they required like a lot of information to be trained and a lot of effort, right? A lot of money. But LLMs basically like outperform NLPs, use NLPs, and expanded like 100x. They are bigger, optimized, and ready to use. But in a nutshell, LLMs are consuming data in the form of text, and they are outputting data in the form of text as well, right? So what they are able to do is to like analyze all this text and actually like give you back an answer to every question that you have. Now, these questions can be translated into different formats of data, not only text, that can be done in a later process. But they are basically super, super optimized and super intelligent. Now, what's happening with LLMs, right? As I mentioned, LLMs are right now the hot thing to talk about in terms of AI. But it's interesting to see how they've been evolving over the years. Like here, for example, we see that they started to be kind of like created with the papers and everything around 2010, 2011. And it was a slow evolution during a few years of a lot of experimentation, a lot of research. And if you see what it's interesting is that it took what took like decades, it started to take like now months, right? So now, just this year, we have a surprisingly amount of LLMs coming out into the market. So this just showcases how technology is now like going at a very, very, very crazy speed, right? And we need to figure out, one, how to use them, but second, like also understand the context, right? Because this means that probably what I'll tell you today is going to change in the next few months. And that's important to notice as well. So what are LLMs? They are algorithms, that are easy to interact with. I think one of the biggest things that LLMs like are known for is that because it's natural language, right? It's text. They're easy to interact. You ask questions, you receive an answer, right? It's like almost talking with a human person. Then second, these LLMs are pre-trained to understand large amounts of data. So, and the word pre-trained is very important, right? Because even though we can use them for many things, right? But they are already pre-trained to do analysis and processes that are very, very sophisticated and complex that we wouldn't achieve by ourselves, right? But the only caveat that LLMs have today is that they can be perceived as dumb on a specific domain cases, right? For example, market research. If you go today and ask some things about to ChatGPT about market research, it's probably going to deliver you back an answer that is not very, very specialized. So what's happening, right? And this is very interesting because that's where innovation it's happening today with LLMs. We know that these LLMs, like the public ones, like the massive ones, have been trained with public data, with data that is just touching the surface of a lot of subjects. So it's not that the LLM is dumb, but it may be perceived as dumb because the data is consuming is not to the level of expertise that you need or we need. And this is happening to every other industry, not only us. But it's important to understand that, right? So let's talk about how to work with LLMs, right? And this is probably the main thing that we want to cover over here. So how to don't work with LLMs, and I saw a lot of people in the industry playing with ChatGPT when early on was launched. Into I ask the questions, I throw my data, the data of a study or whatever, and then I receive an insight. And what we started seeing is that those insights were not very impressive, right? Either they were a little bit crazy, like I don't know if you have heard of hallucinations, where the LLM actually grasps a lot of information and adds it to your query, and it maybe even give you recommendations that you don't even know where they are coming from. If you remove the hallucinations, which is like the ability of the LLM to just bring data that it's not backed, by anything, basically, it's just putting words together. If you remove that, you maybe also have like an insight that is super descriptive, right? It's not telling you anything new. So this is not the way to do it. Luckily, there is a way to do it. There is something that we can do to actually do it right. So, and this is the new concept that we're going to be talking about, which is vector knowledge databases, right? So the new scheme is you ask the question, you allow the LLM to process your questions, and then through access to a vector database with your knowledge, you allow the LLM to become more intelligent. So think about it as an extra storage room, right? Where instead of the LLM just accessing the data that it already has in his home, then you have this extra room that is called market research. It's called whatever your company is, right? And it can access that to actually deliver you a better response. And your response is going to look now way better, right? It's because it's taking data not only from what it's known, but also what you have already provided as an extra. Then you have different things like train of thoughts. COT is the way you prompt the LLM, which is also like a whole different conversation we could have. But it is also important, right? Because then one, you need to give it access. And then second, you need to figure out how to prompt it and get the best answer back. So this is a new way to actually have smart and actionable insights. So again, thinking about the memories, of LLMs are basically that. It's like giving the LLM further information to understand the purpose of what you're looking for. And what can you put in that vector database is your methodology, for example, your historical data, super important, your spotted trends, your business logic. Like imagine having your best researcher, your senior person, holding like all the information that it has and put it in there. That will make this LLM produce so much valuable information. So vectorized databases are one of the things that we need to start talking about now. And one of the things that are more important in the industry today, and again, not only for us, but also for every other industry out there. Now, let's talk finally about the quick information of what we're going to be showcasing. Basically, let's see it in action. This is something that we launched this week. As you know, like the beer industry is right now going through massive changes, with Bud Light changing their first spot, and now Modelo taking the number one spot on selling brands. And what we did was test ads from the top 10 brands with 800 beer consumers in 1 day. Basically, I want to just spot here that automation enables us to do something like that, right? Do it like super fast with a lot of consumers, and just also not only data collect, but also analyze data. So we did that. We also were able to incorporate to this test way more layers of data. We're talking about content testing over here, where we have more than service only, eye tracking, content tagging, and facial coding. And then finally, get an insight. Imagine like being able to, like, as a brand owner, like test out multiple pieces of content, and in a matter of seconds, right after data collection happens, you can get a real actionable key learning. I'm going to leave it here. If you want to read it, it's very impressive. It's even capable of understanding context of what's going on with the brand. And it's telling us basically that despite everything that's going on, like, add awareness for Bud Light is still high, even more than the other 10 brands tested, right? And even though it is hurting right now, it may come back. So this is pretty impressive. We're very excited, and we're happy to talk to you guys about anything regarding how to use LLMs for insight generation.